Hey, this is Michael Emery. Thanks for tuning into the Slow Baja. This podcast is powered by Tequila Fortaleza, handmade in small batches, and hands down, my favorite tequila. Slow Baja is brought to you by the Baja XL Rally. The Baja XL is the largest and longest amateur off-road rally on the Baja Peninsula. It's 10 epic days, LA to Cabo to LA. Check it out at bajaxl.org. Hey, it's Michael Emery of Slow Baja, and I'm just delighted to be here in San Juan Capistrano with Sarah and Jesse Beck, and we're going to talk about Baja. Many may know that Sarah was my very first podcast. I think she was the second podcast to air, but she was the first podcast that I ever recorded about a year ago, and I'm delighted to be here in her home on this sunny, beautiful day. It's very quiet. We've got the windows closed and the door closed, and we're sitting, I don't know, 6-8 feet apart, and we're just going to talk Baja. So, Sarah and Jesse, say hello.
Hello.
Hi. All right.
Well, that was quick.
Hello, Slow Baja. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, so excited to revisit you, have you at our house, and continue our friendship and more talk about Baja.
Yeah, so let's jump into it. The two of you have long familial connections to Baja. Sarah, obviously, your family moved down there when you were growing up in Oregon, but Jesse, you're a SoCal kid, and you were heading down to Baja in your youth as well.
Yeah, my family started taking me, my mom and dad, when we were all the family. We went pretty much when we were babies, and we would camp on the beach and explore Baja, and it just, yeah, we never stopped going down there for our whole life, so it's been great.
There's some rad slide pictures of Jesse and his brothers on the beach in San Felipe that are so cool too.
Yeah, just have to look at the microphone. You can't talk to me, Sarah.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, there's some really great slides of Jesse's family when he was just a baby. Well, I think there's a picture of his brother in a crib on the beach in San Felipe. Yeah.
Yep. So that's pretty much how it all started for me. Just going down and being in the water, camping, watching the Baja 1000, and having fun down there.
And Jesse, you're a San Juan Capistrano local. Do you grow up here?
Yes, I grew up here. I've been here pretty much my whole life.
So what was it for your parents that took them down there and they brought you down there? Was it fishing? Was it surfing? Was it exploring, getting away?
Just the allure of the, adventure, exploring probably aspect. I mean, my dad drove to Cabo before Highway 1 was paved. So,
can you tell me on what kind of vehicle that was?
FJ 55, the longer wagon. Is that
very cool.
The 50, yeah, super
very
cool. And that's what we used to go down in when I was a kid.
Love it.
It was red and white, and it had, that tailgate with the window that rolled down, and 4-door, big rack on the top, and we could drive on the beach, and we would tow a dune buggy down there sometimes, and there was sometimes other families that would come, and we would camp on the beaches, like the coves, what are they, probably 5-10 miles south of San Felipe. But yeah, it was the FJ55. That was the first vehicle we started going down there, and I think that's what my dad drove to Cabo. I think it was 1970 when he did that. So he's got some good stories about that. And
didn't he used to get a Volkswagen van on the beach too?
He also had a Volkswagen van. I think that was maybe in the late 60s, and he would put his motorcycle in there and
take the tires way down.
I think if you drop the air in those, you can drive them on the sand. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's down to 12 pounds or something is what I heard.
Probably.
Yeah, back in the old days. But with the engine in the back, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it all works. Hey, I talked to a guy he went down with his parents in 66, David Cure, and he was saying in those days you poked and picked over the rocks and, the donkey tracks and all that, and you got down to Cabo, and then you ended up to La Paz, and you put your car on the ferry and drove up on the paved roads on the other side just because the road down was so difficult. So thinking about your dad doing it, in those days before the road was paved, it's a hell of an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. You hear some of those stories about there not being very much fuel. You get like fuel can be an issue still today.
Yeah.
And imagine it back then. And then even some of the roads, like I think they call it the Three Sisters, south of Portecidas, between like Portecidas and LA or Gonzaga Bay, it was a really bad. Or maybe it was the Seven Sisters, but there was there were places that were known to be pretty difficult to get through and challenging. So yeah.
And so, Sarah, tell me about the two of you. We're just going to recap that Baja love story.
I was going to say that Jesse's story about how he got over to the West Coast is kind of fun. I don't know if he wants to share that before we dive into our love story. But
so you spent some time on the East Coast, south of San Felipe. I did remember that from our earlier conversations. And you had some family friends that maybe were flying you down there, if I have that right?
Yeah, so, well, that came later. That came a little later. So when I was very young, before I was 10 years old, we were going to San Felipe. And then as I got, like around 10 years old, I was surfing and bodyboarding a lot. And I remember telling my dad, like, hey, we need to go to the other side. There's waves over there. So we ended up deciding on going to San Juanico. And I think that was about 1984. So I was probably like 12 years old, I want to say. Might have been 11. Might have been like 83, I'm not sure. But that was pretty much our first place for me that I went to on the West Coast. And I mean, the impression, it left a remarkable impression on me, because just as a surfer, you come around, you kind of drive into town and see that setup with the points and the waves breaking, the potential, and the waves just peeling like that. It's really good. And we got waves, and we camped there on the point, and we never looked back. We kept going year after year there. Ended up buying some property and building a home there. So it's been really good.
That access in those days was a little bit more difficult than it is today. I mean, you're coming in, I'm assuming, the overland route from the north past San Ignacio, and it was a little bit slower and more difficult than the folks who can drive down south and come around on the paved road now.
Right. Actually, the very first couple of times we went, we would drive. We did not take the north road from San Ignacio, and we did not come up from the south from Constitution or Insurgentes. We came across the peninsula just north of Laredo. There's a road that goes to La Purísima and San Isidro, and we would go over the mountains that way. Because like distance-wise, back then, that was the closest way from the pavement.
That road was good for a long time, too. That was one of the main
and it was kind of like
points of access.
Yeah. And then as the north road just was always challenging, because it's easy to get lost out there, and you can get stuck out there, and
nobody's coming for a couple of days out there. Yeah.
Well, I think there are, but there's people coming by people all have always lived out there. But I guess if you're stuck in the wrong place, like in a corner where no one's going to see you, it could be a couple days.
I feel like a lot of people like to talk about how treacherous the North Road is when it's not quite.
I think we've all had our issues out there. I think
we have, yeah.
You do it even 2 or 3 times, you're gonna get lost. And hey, weren't we already here 10 minutes ago? This looks familiar. And, you just have to learn the landmarks, and also it's learn how to drive that road, because there's like the really slick mud that you can encounter that a lot of people aren't used to. And then there's some deep sand out there that you got to be aware of and know how to negotiate that. And then the rest of it's pretty, rocky, but that can provide its own challenges too, with like flat tires or cars breaking down.
The interesting thing about the North Road, we'll get to how we met in a second, but what we've observed recently is how much it's really changed over the years. It used to be a lot drier out on the salt flats, so you could really get out there and go really fast. And I don't know if it's tide changes or like more rain, but it hasn't been that way in a really long time that you can go really fast. So the mid road became a road that a lot of people used, and now it's the like higher road up there. And I think it's funny because the first time Jesse and I drove that, it was probably 20 years ago now, but there were trees growing in the middle of the road. There was barely a road there, and now it's, you know, the main thoroughfare, which is kind of
all those
how much it's changed.
Different avenues have changed over the years. That's true.
Yeah, we have like funny nicknames for when you know your landmarks. So there's like Job of the Hut and Pig Boy, and we have
the Nazca lines.
Yeah, we have all of our different landmarks where you know you're kind of going the right way. But I guess maybe we should get into the original question, which is, you know, how Jesse and I met. And Jesse had a history, and his dad had just begun building a house, and the house it's an adobe house, and it was on Gringo Hill, but there was only maybe 4 houses on Gringo Hill at the time. And Jesse's dad's an architect, so he had begun designing some of the houses there, and he was building his own house. And the first time I ever saw Jesse's house was before I met him, and it was just, the walls were just going up. They were adobe walls, and, you know, there was a lot of, my family had just moved there, and there was a lot of gossip. There's always a lot of gossip in San Juanico, and there was a lot of gossip about the Beck family and who they were, and, you know, just talk, I guess. And
small town talk.
Yeah, small town talk. And the first time I
just
saw,
like any other small town.
Yeah, exactly. The first time I ever saw Jesse, I was actually 15, and we were camped on the point, and this like wild red-haired kid comes, you know, thundering down the road, and he's surfing, and then he's kayaking, like river kayaking, and then he's ocean kayaking, and then he's back to surfing, and then he's boogie boarding, and then he's like riding his bike past, and then he's like running past, and his dad was just like driving behind him the whole time, like just following him wherever he went. And I could remember my family just like looking at Jesse and going, man, that guy has way more energy. You know, we're just sitting there reading books in our like, you know, camp chairs or whatever. And so it was really funny that was the first time I ever saw him, but I didn't meet him for another year. And at that point, my family had bought a house, and we were living there full time. And we camped there a couple of years, and then we finally got the house. And I had convinced my mom, because I was 16, to let me drive myself to Third Point to surf at dawn. And she had finally agreed to give me full reign of the car without an adult in it. And so, you know, I got out there before the sun was up and scurried down the cliff, and the waves were really, really fun. There was a ton of sand at Third Point, and they were pretty like shoulder head high sets, and just really spinny little barrels, and the water was still warm. It was in the fall. It was actually on Halloween. And next thing I know, I look up on the cliff, and there's another car, and I'm thinking to myself, what? I just got up early and finally got to surf by myself, and now some yahoo's gonna come down here and steal my waves. And, you know, he paddles out and looks at me, and I look at him, and I say, I think I've met you before, because I'd met his brother also, who has red hair. And Jesse goes, no, I would have remembered you. And that was it, pretty much, right?
Yep, that was it. Dawn Patrol, Third Point. Electricity in the water.
Yeah, we really liked each other.
No, I would have remembered you.
Yes. Yeah. I remember pulling up like, oh man, someone already got out here before me, darn it. And I was like, oh, it's a girl out there. Let's go see who this is.
Yeah. And then we ended up meeting up later and surfing with this guy, Boss, he used to do Boss surfboards at Second. Yeah, Bobo at Second Point. He was really big in San Clemente. I don't know whatever happened to Bobo, because he never. Yeah, I haven't seen his waves his boards in a long time. But yeah, we both like borrowed these. He had these really colorful longboards, and we each borrowed one. I think I got on a red one and Jessica on a yellow one, and we longboarded together. And
Second.
Yeah, the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents were throwing a Halloween party, so I invited him over. And the rest is kind of history. It was
That was day one.
Yeah.
What's the population at that time of year in those days? What would you estimate the population of San Juanico?
The Gringo population or the Mexican population?
Yeah,
or both?
Or both. Well, you know.
Well,
break it down for me.
It was winter, and a lot of there wasn't a high school or even a middle school in town yet. So once they hit about middle school age, the kids either just stopped going to school or they would go to Constitution or La Paz. So kids that were my age, there weren't a lot of them in town. they would come back during the summer or during the holidays. And so on the off season, there was probably like 500-600 people in town. And when everybody was in town, there was probably maybe 700, like in the midst of summer. In terms of gringos, there was probably 20 individuals that were in the process of building houses or had just built houses in the last few years. I think that has a lot to do with the fideicomiso and the changes, the government changes, and being able to access, foreign properties that happened with NAFTA and all that in the 1990s. But I'd say there was maybe 8 to 10 full-timers, and so everybody knew each other. We all kind of hung out and put up with each other, I guess. There were some fun characters.
So in those days, a crowded day out on the surf was how many people?
Well, that was the really interesting thing. That was, it was I think Jesse and I met in 96.
It could still get crowded.
Well, the reason why it would get crowded was because of Sean Collins and the Surfline. So Surfline had just become a thing, and you could call up this...
Or because people just followed the swells. And
yeah, that too. It was just I think there was a big shift in technology then. And so when there was a solid swell, people would just show up, boom. And so at that point, there'd probably be, I think max, maybe 30 people would take up the lineup. I mean, I think now it's like 100 people in the lineup, right? If there's a good swell. But
just on a regular summer day, there's more than...
And the funny thing was, Second Point was called Bambi's. That was really not a lot of the locals surfed there, and not a lot of people came to surf Second Point. It was really Third Point, and I think it was because of the sand.
And no one really surfed at first.
Yeah, nobody.
And Zeros was
right.
That was like, no one
only
even
us.
knew what Zeros was.
Yeah, we only surfed that, and so that was kind of interesting how that shifted at some point. I would say Second Point's probably more popular than Third Point in a lot of ways nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Jesse, are you still an old school OG at Scorpion Bay? Say out of my way, kids.
No, I mean, I don't know. There's like some of the older guys. There's people there that, are a whole generation or two older than me that went, there's people that went there in the 60s and 70s, before I was born. So, and some of those people I think are still there. There might be one or two of those guys.
There's
some of the guys that are in their 70s and 80s now that are down there have, they did Baja trips and drove Baja and surfed Baja and surfed there when it was, in like the 70s, and not very many people really even knew about it.
Baja is funny. There's like an ego component. Something you hear when you're traveling the peninsula, I'm sure you've heard it too, Michael, is that you'll go whale watching or something, and you'll run into like a group of traveling foreigners,
or
and
fellow Baja snobs.
Yeah, and the number one question you'll
Jesse
get...
says, smiling.
Yeah. The number one question you'll get, though, is, how long you been down? As if that's some sort of, like, clout or something.
Street cred.
Yeah,
and
not how long have you been coming? Like, how long have you been here is the one question. And then later it's how long have you been coming? And San Juanico is that amplified by, like, 30. And there's a gal that lives in San Juanico now, and she was joking that we should all have T-shirts with a Sharpie that says, my name's so-and-so, and I've been coming to San Juanico, because there's a lot of weird ownership over the spot. And so now there's people that have been going there for like 5 to 10 years, and they think they've, got the clout. And that's fine. Everybody, I don't know. There's other places I'd like to surf besides San Juanico, so I don't care. I just go out there and have fun. And mostly with our kids, that's the funnest part, is surfing with them.
Well, let's fast forward to that. Yeah. You two are in Baja a lot with your 2 beautiful children. And I think that's an amazing thing that you've, to quote Cameron Steele, shared the stoke. You shared the stoke with your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just love going down there, and it's fun to camp with them. And the surfing's great. San Juanico's a great place for kids to surf. It can get crowded, but it's still really good for the kids there. And then it's just super fun to like go and camp on some beach where there's nothing for miles and miles, and they wake up in the morning and just run around on the beach, or Or like we went to last year we went to Santa Maria, and it's it's a pretty technical drive to get down in there, and we have a Jeep, so we were able to get like all the way down to the end of the road, and when you're in that canyon, it's amazing down there, and it was just nice spending the night, having a fire in the arroyo, and waking up in the morning, and pretty much know you're not going to see anybody. I mean, you might, but.
And the kids didn't want to leave. That's kind of wherever we go, the kids never want to leave. And I would argue, especially our daughter Layla, that she would probably equate Baja to heaven on earth. Right?
Yeah, like we've done trips with other families, and they love it when there's other kids. But even when it's just us and there's no other kids around, they're really stoked.
Yeah,
they really have a good time.
We took them down into Sierra San Francisco. That was one of our Baja checklists that we hadn't done yet, and was it November, I guess?
Yeah.
We went up and got the mules and the guide, and it was really cool. It was cold and misty in the middle of the winter, and we rode the mules down. Jesse hiked because he's kind of an animal, and I think that might have been one of the biggest impressions on the kids in terms of adventure. You really completely have to unplug when you go down to the Sierra San Francisco. There's absolutely no cell service, and you have to camp for at least 3 nights. So then at a certain point, your cell phone even dies. So, and I think seeing the cave paintings, and it's really cool because there's no safety regulation out there. You're literally scaling a cliff to get up to the caves and see these enormous cave paintings and try and wrap your head around it. And I have no idea how the kids wrap their head around that. But I think for me that was the most impressionable trip we've been on in a long time.
Yeah.
Jesse's got his glasses on.
Yeah,
he's checking out
I forgot Arroyo San Pablo.
He's checking out the vintage AAA map, which is on the kitchen table here.
Yeah, I'm thinking like you should have your laptop and you should be showing him some Baja photos.
Yeah,
it would be cool.
I mean, my archives are vast.
Well, can I ask you about that specific trip, because that looms large in my mind. I want to obviously get out and do
Highly
that.
recommended to you and anyone.
All listeners.
Yeah.
And it's great commerce for the people too. They're waiting. They're up there waiting to give the tours, and they're excited to show it.
Yeah. So peel that back a little bit. How did you? Now, again, you guys are old Baja hands. Sarah, you've been to Baja more than 100 times, maybe 200 times. We discussed. You don't want to track or brag, but I'm going to humble brag for you on that.
Right.
You've been down to Baja a lot.
Yeah.
So how did you secure that guide and figure out where to go and what to do and make all that happen?
So Jesse and I are really interesting in the way that we travel, and I'd say Jesse even more so than myself. He is completely spur of the moment. Let's not make any plans and see how it turns out. And that can be a positive and negative. Sometimes we end up like fighting or looking for a hotel room or a place to camp, and it's like, 10 o'clock at night, and we're like, yeah, we should have gotten up earlier. We shouldn't have spent so much time,
there's no
on licuados or whatever. And so there can be positive and negatives of that. But it had been on our list, and we had done some research, and we knew Jesse had been up to this Sierra San Francisco many years before, right, on like a bike or something. I'm trying to remember.
Been up there.
Yeah, and so we kind of knew where to go, and we just
Wait, there's a sign. I mean, there's a sign on the Highway 1, so
we've
it's been there for a while now. You pass it, and if you're interested in petroglyphs, and if you've read the books, they're up there. There's the big canyons are up there. So, and
we've come across some just hiking in Baja as well. So we've just seen them from exploring roads and seeing a cave and scaling up them and finding them. That was actually, I'm going to backtrack. I come back to that trip, but I was going to mention when Jesse and I first met, I had explored a lot of Baja with my parents, and I'm grateful for the times that they would, put their truck into 4-wheel drive, and we'd go out to places that a lot of people weren't going to. But when I met Jesse, he completely shifted my perspective really on the inland components of Baja, which are, one of my favorites, especially in the winter, to go and explore the mountains of Baja. Is just, it's so mind-blowingly beautiful, and hard to even describe how unique it is out there. And the ranches are really cool. So Jesse was building his dad's house, and every weekend we would get in his little 22R Toyota pickup, no 4-wheel drive. And
Getting technical.
Yeah, and we would
The legendary 22R.
Yeah.
2-wheel drive, though.
Two-wheel
Come
drive,
on, man.
put those tires way down to 12. But yeah, so we would go to these ranchos. We would go looking for petroglyphs and cave art and go and just hang out on these ranches and talk to the people. And I definitely defined how I wanted to travel and explore. And there's still ranches we want to go back and visit. You'd like drive up to a ranch and they'd be so excited to see you because they're living in the middle of nowhere in the Baja Mountains, and they would tell you the last gringo they saw was 3 months ago or something, and they serve you whatever they have on their farm. So whether that's cheese, their goat cheese they're making, or wine, or a cup of coffee, they're always so generous. And I think that kind of started us exploring the inland. And so we knew that the Sierra San Francisco was going to be amazing. We had read about it and talked to people. And so that was what we did. Last year we drove up to the top, and it was nighttime.
Yeah.
It was dark and kind of rainy.
Yeah, we need to go back and do the arroyo. There's an arroyo that drains off the east side. I think it's called Arroyo San Gregonio. That I think you need to get a previous permit to get into that one, but it's supposed to be really good too.
Yeah, you don't need a permit to do this. Like the Sierra, you can go as far as 7 days with Sierra San Francisco, and if you just drive up to the top there, they have like a little visitor center, and the way it works is all the ranchers that live up there, they're all family, but they're all approved guides, and so they are all waiting for their turn basically. So Eduardo will get one, and then Felipe, and then one.
It's like the taxi line at the airport.
Yeah, that's exactly
in the old days when there were taxis.
So they all take turns, and we were looking at our guy this last time. Like, this guy looks really old, and I feel like he had like a satellite eye, and we were judging him a little, and he turned out to be super cool. He was awesome. He took really good care of us, and the kids were absolutely thrilled. What you do is you kind of go down into a canyon, and then you go across an arroyo, and then you like dip down into this huge wash, a huge canyon, and there's tons of palm trees down there, and there's fish in the creek and frogs, and the wildlife is absolutely insane. It's really, we convinced our guy, because it was really cold, to make like a little fire. And he was like, oh, I can't do it. And he was super paranoid. So we just made a little tiny fire, got warm, and then we took it out. But it's the cool thing, I think you can attest this, are the mules. The mules and the burros, I don't know what I thought about them, but I was sort of astounded at their ability to climb down these insanely
you can pack
steep.
all kinds of food and tents and camp pretty luxuriously down in there. Because they really know how to tie those mules, like load them up and get a good pack on them, and those things are incredible. That trail gets kind of technical in a couple places, and they're fine.
Here at Slow Baja, we can't wait to drive our old Land Cruiser south of the border. When we go, we'll be going with Baja Bound Insurance. Their website's fast and easy to use. Check them out at bajabound.com. That's bajabound.com, serving Mexico travelers since 1994. Hey, Baja tourism is picking up, and our friends at the Animal Pad and Tap Act want to remind you, when you're crossing the border, just say no to puppy peddlers. I know they're cute, but the sooner we can end the demand, we can end the supply. For more information, check out theanimalpad.org and Tap Act on Instagram and Facebook. Sarah, we touched on this briefly in our first conversation, and I think you told me about Layla's reaction. Oh no, we're not going down there, are we? It stuck with me all this time. Just where you sort of like look down and say, "Are you kidding me, Mom?"
I feel like that's often Layla's response to things, she and I, just as I've been highlighting on Instagram, we just went down, had a little Cabo trip, and I said, okay, I'm going to take you surfing, and she's like, okay, let's go surf, and then, we get the surfboard, we get down to the beach, and she's like, oh no, we're paddling out there, and it was fine, but yeah, she's funny, but she always goes for it, and she's loves it, and she talks about it constantly, and is always telling her friends how they need to come to Baja with us. And it's hard to get people with kids to go down there with you, though. It's hard to get people to slow down enough to go on one of our crazy adventures. We brought a family a couple years ago, and they'd really been wanting to go to Baja, and they had some other friends that go to Baja pretty consistently, and I think we pretty much blew them away. We took them on some really crazy... We took them to Baja, San Francisco. Have you been out there? It's like... So, I mean, what a spectacular... All the way down to El Barril and past there. I thought that's just unbelievable beach. And, you know, I think the whole time we're driving from... We went swimming with the whale sharks with them, and then we drove them down to San Francisco, and I think they were thinking, like, where are these people taking us? This is insane, you know, and their van's breaking down and stuff. And then we got to San Francisco, and I think they were like, oh, this is about as beautiful as a place can get, right?
Yeah. All right, so you've touched on another, you know, bucket list item for a lot of people at Baja is swimming with the whale shark. So where did you go, and how did you arrange that? Travel tips with Sarah Beck today on Slow Baja.
I'm full of them. Again, we're more spur of the moment. I had done a little research, and I just didn't even know where to begin with it. So we just drove down there, and Jesse has traveled with Cameron Steele a bit, and they did go to LA Bay quite a bit when he was working with Cameron. And so Jesse's definitely well versed in LA Bay, and there's a hotel where he knows the lady that runs it. And we stayed there and said, well, where do we do the whale sharks? And she directed us to someone, and they said they weren't available, so we should go to another place. So we drove down, and that was Angel. I forget the name of his company.
I forget.
He was really cool, though, and so we just scheduled it, and he said, okay, meet us at the, you know, down
We'll
in
have
the harbor.
that in the show notes, as they say in podcast
Yeah, we might be able to find some information on him.
Yeah, we can find some
So
information.
out of Bahia de Los Angeles is what I was getting to.
Yeah.
And there are 3 or 4 operators that
There's several.
And you could do it in La Paz, but what I had heard about La Paz is that they're getting a little more strict about their regulations down there. And then you can also do it, I think, out of Laredo. There's also an opportunity to do it there, although I haven't talked to anyone that has done it.
Sounds like there's a constant supply of folks coming up from Cabo doing it out of La Paz, so it is a little bit more tranquilo, they say, in Bahia de Los Angeles.
I don't know if you follow Story of a Mermaid on Instagram.
I don't. That Story of a Mermaid on Instagram.
Yeah, she is.
If you're not following A Mom's Guide to Travel, but that's one more time. I just looked at you and I tripped on it. A Mom's Guide to Traveling Baja.
Yeah, it's a long one. So I got just as you and I became connected, she and I started interacting on Instagram, and she's super cool. I don't know where she's from originally, but she's been working in La Paz doing tours, and she's really cool. I've directed a few people to her for when, you know, people message me and say, oh, what you know, got some recommendations, I want to see whales or whatever. And so she's someone that I direct people to, and she's amazing. I think she's spending some time in San Juanico right now, but I definitely recommend you guys follow Story of a Mermaid. Her content's really fun and uplifting, and she is another person that just loves Baja. So, and it's always nice, you know, for me to connect with another female that loves Baja, because there's a lot of guys out there that are, you know, obsessed with Baja, and then there's just a few of us ladies that really want to explore it.
Hey, Jesse and Sarah, can you talk a little bit about, you touched on it earlier, and I just want to circle back to it, getting up to the ranchos and meeting the people, and you mentioned the generosity of the people who are there, whether it's a cup of coffee or the cheese that they've made or the wine that they've made or something that they've made. Can you just talk about how the generosity of the people in Baja permeates, whether you're at the rancho or elsewhere, and your thoughts on that, and maybe your evolution of your experience with that over the many, many years you've been down there now?
Yeah, I think that I would say the people, I don't know, I guess sort of like stereotyping or judging people, but it seems like the people that are the furthest away out in the, you know, like the heart of the interior, with the, you know, like the least amount of material items, they live very, very simply. Those seem to be like, you know, the most like genuine people that I've ever met, like in all my travels around the world. And you can go to other countries, and it kind of, I think that holds true to maybe humanity in a sense. Like the people with the least are the most generous and just super kind and welcoming, and they just want to talk to you and, you know, give you a drink and sit down, and you end up falling asleep at their ranch for 2 hours. And
I just had a thought of what our...
It's really fun. It's really...
Yeah.
It's a great way to see Baja and like kind of step back in the world and step back and see how people lived, you know, 100, 200 years ago. And they do so much with so little, and it's really nice. I mean, there's great people in all of Baja, but it really seems like those remote, the people that are the most isolated are very interesting and just very humble and kind.
I'm thinking of Punta Quebrada, our most recent Baja trip, or one of our most recent Baja trips. We went back out to Bahia Tortuga, which is actually where we got this shell hanging here.
Very cool.
We were eating in a restaurant, and the guy had a few of them, and that was his prized possession, and he really didn't want to give it up, but we convinced him to sell it to us, and it's one of my favorite pieces in our house. It's really fun. You can't see it, but what it is, it's a shell hanging. So this man did use tacks and fishing line and little, are those puka shells, I think? And,
they're called olivella.
Yeah, the olivella
shells.
Yeah. But so I have a special connection to Bahia Tortuga because of that. And one of my followers actually lives in Bahia Tortuga, and he's constantly like, get out here, like do some more, you know, to highlight Bahia Tortuga. So we went out there, and I was like, we were just north of Bahia Tortuga getting ready to go out to Malarimo, and I said to Jesse, like, take that road. He's like, I don't know, I think that goes out to a dump. And I said, yeah, let's find out. So we go out, and we were just a couple minutes out of town, and we end up finding this road that's just insane. And the road progressively gets worse and worse to the point that we're like driving between these crevices. And I'm wondering if we're gonna like tip over, and there's basically no road. We're just looking for a track, and we can't tell if it's quad tracks or car tracks, and we're just trying to make our way and hope we find a road, because at this point there's no turning back. And the stratigraphy out there and the geology is insane. It's so beautiful. And we're driving, and then we finally get out to this little point, and it's a little tiny fishing village, and we come around, and there's
4 houses.
It's 4 houses, yeah. And we go out to the point. There's one house on the point, and they're waving us down, and they're like, "Get over here, get over here." So they must have been watching us from their house, and they were from Bahia Tortuga, but they had their like weekend house, and then a couple of them lived there full time to fish, and they were making like carne asada and sausage, and they were having like a weekend feast, and they're like, get over here, sit down, and they're pouring us, you know, soda and making us tacos, and
kids are playing.
They're like, oh, your kids can, you know, play with our kids, and we were just instantly welcomed and invited into this fantastic party with amazing food.
Yeah.
And they made these like garlic potatoes that were with
that's
jalapeno.
right.
Remember
That's
that?
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
they were so good. And I think that was one of my coolest experiences of being really way out in the middle of Baja and instantly being
Complete
invited.
strangers, yeah, just right into a full dinner.
Right. And then, of course, because everybody's family in Baja, one of our favorite questions to ask people is, well, what's your last name? And then start connecting who they might know from their last name, because there's a few really strong names in Baja. And
Arce and others, yeah.
Yeah, Villavicencia. Were they were Mesa,
they're
weren't
regional.
they?
Yeah.
Were they Mesa? I think they were Mesa.
There's like 10 to 20, and depending on how far north or south you are, there's some of them are stronger and weaker. But yeah, that's really interesting
And
dynamic to look
turned out
at.
we knew some of the same people.
Yeah.
You know, even though we're
Yeah.
way out on the edge of the hook of, you know, midway through Baja. Punta Quebrada, I highly recommend anyone make it out there. Not many people make it out there, and I think they're looking for visitors. So if you're someone that's looking for remote adventure and remote, you don't have to take the no road like we did. There's actually a full on, you know, like graded road that goes in there, but that was That was unreal, I would say.
Two things I'd love for you to expand on from that. Take that road. Take that road.
Yes.
Take that road. So, Jesse, it appears on the internet you're doing all the driving. So I'm assuming Sarah's doing a lot
most of the time.
doing a lot of the navigating.
Uh-huh.
But tell me about Take That Road. How large does that live in your life and in your vocabulary and your vernacular when you're traveling in Baja?
Well, I've been looking at the map here and I've been thinking. I think my biggest, I don't know how to describe this, but my biggest interest in Baja is going to like places I've never been. But I think even more than that is going to like the most difficult places to go to in Baja. So like, the places like Pichaco El Diablo, like the highest peak in Baja. Not many people have been up there, and you can go from the observatory and there's like trails and it's pretty difficult. But like when I did it, we went from the east side up, which you can do also up the canyon, but we did like this northeast ridge, which maybe no one's ever done. And there's just, like I like to look at the map and like, where's the biggest hole where there's no roads? Like, oh, okay, look at that. There's a mountain like pretty much dead center in it. Let's try to go climb to the top of that mountain, ride our motorcycles, or take the car as close as we can get, and then hike. That's the kind of stuff I like to do.
And then when we're traveling as a family, I'm usually like, I know he's either been there or not. So then I'm like, what's on that road? And then we'll kind of go from there. And sometimes we'll be planning to go on a completely different route. And I'll be looking at the map and say, well, have you been out there? And he'll either say yes or no. And then...
Or we might be trying to get to that mountain and we don't get there because we just take a road that looks good or that we don't know where it goes, and you end up in a really cool place, and then you got to come back some other time to try to...
This last trip we were out at Malarimo, we got down to the river mouth there, and then we started to come back and lost our road, and again we're just on this, and we were out there for so long just trying to find any semblance of like a main dirt road.
When we were leaving.
Yeah, we were just cracking up. We're like, we may never, and the kids are like, how much longer?
The good thing about Baja too is if you have enough fuel, you're not really that lost. You can get somewhere because there's water on both sides of you.
Yeah.
So this is the point that Malcolm Smith made when we were talking. He said, I was asking about the Perry Dakar, and he said, Africa is just so big.
Right.
He said you get lost in Baja, you eventually go one direction long enough, you're going to get to something.
Yes.
He said you can go all day and still not get to anything in Africa. And you're absolutely right. You point yourself east or west or something, you're going to get to something. You're going to cross a road that has more tire tracks on it. You're going to figure it out. Malarimo, it's been on my list for a long time. Tell me about that.
Malarimo, it's a trip out there. It's
there's some like unexploded ordnances out there sometimes. Like
all the time.
There's like these like, I guess stuff from all over the world from the ocean washes up, but there's these like, we found these signal flares. I looked them up online, but I think the Navy uses them to maybe like, let's say someone falls off a ship or they're gonna like bomb a certain area, they can throw this thing in and light part of the ocean up there. But those things I've seen on the beach there, and all kinds of cool giant trees from like Oregon or the Northwest wash up on the beach there.
Loads of trash. There's
a lot of plastic.
Piles and piles of
Sometimes trash. Those people go out there to look for the Japanese, the glass fishing
floats. Yeah.
There's a giant. What we find the last time was a car. Right, there was just an abandoned car.
There was a car half buried on the beach out there.
And 2 whales.
Yeah, a lot of big whales wash up. So it's really neat. It's remote. There's really not much out there, although there is it looks like fishermen built a small like fishing cabin on the, what would that be, like the
right on the Arroyo,
kind of like the east side side of Malarimo, right where the Laguna Ojo de Liebre, where the water kind of goes into the lagoon there on the point. That was new since the last time we'd been out there,
and the road's better too. We were out there maybe 10 years ago, and the road from Bahia Tortuga, or really from I'm blanking on the name, Punta Eugenia, right? Is that what it is? Yeah, so you can go to Punta Eugenia and get a boat over to Natividad, and that kind of ends there. The road, you can't really keep going. You have to go out on a dirt road kind of around that, and then you cruise down. You cruise the big hook from there, and a lot of it's on a high cliff, so you end up just up on this high cliff in like a really sandy area, and that road was really hard before, and it seems like maybe it's been graded.
It was graded.
And there was a couple new settlements actually out there this time too. Mm-hmm. There was more people living out there.
That was on the north or like the west end of the Malarimo.
Yeah, I like it more.
It's getting a little more.
I prefer the south of Eugenia.
It's
That's
a beautiful
incredible
section of coastline, and then the desert just like south of that beach is really beautiful too. It's a nice drive, a nice place to go explore and camp out there.
All right, well, let's pivot here to the Slow Baja Travel Talk Lightning Round.
All right, let's do it.
Travel Talk Lightning Round with Jesse and Sarah Beck, and we're going to talk about, I don't know, just tell me about your first association favorite luxury place to stay.
Well, my new one is the Royal Solaris. We just stayed there. I'd never stayed in all-inclusive, and that was really fun. I'd say it was fancy 20 years ago, and it's still really nice, and incredible food, great staff. It's right on the water in San Jose del Cabo, which I prefer to Cabo San Lucas. It's a little less busy, the energy, and it attracts more Mexican tourists, so you get to sort of like hang out with people from all over and talk about Mexico, which I like to do, and it's just a super fun hotel. The other one I would say...
Let's repeat the name of that one again,
That's the Royal Solaris in San Jose del Cabo, and that's great for the turtles. It's right by the estuary, so there's all kinds of stuff you can see there, and it's more of a...
I like that. Was it in Ensenada, the El Estero?
Oh, Estero Beach, yeah.
Estero Beach Hotel.
That was my first time.
We just went recently.
For us, it's luxury. It's close to the border, so for like a lot of listeners, it would be a good, maybe if they're new, a good, like you could do an introductory day.
Yeah, you're down there in 2 hours.
Weekend there, yeah, you could cross the border and get there in 2 hours, and nice grounds right on the beach. Swimming pool if you got kids,
estuary,
it's good.
Kayak.
Yeah, it looks right out through like the opening of the estuary out to the ocean. You're kind of removed from the center of town, which is, I guess it could be good and bad. It's nice, it's quiet out there, but if you wanted to go into town, it's not that far away. And there's also a lot of restaurants like leading up into those grounds, into the gate.
Some cool neighborhoods in there.
Yeah, you could eat, and there's stuff right outside of the hotel. And then the La Bufadora is kind of just around the corner to the south.
Gives you more access to southern Ensenada, which has a lot of cool things that maybe people aren't tuned into, like the hot springs in San Carlos or in
all right,
Ropan.
hang on. Favorite hot springs? We're in the lightning round,
all hot
Sarah.
Springs.
All hot springs.
I would say Guadalupe Canyon, but I think actually...
We don't need to send any business there, so tell me about it. You got a secondary?
Well, they would want business. They would be very grateful for the business, actually. So I'm going to give it a shout out because they do want the business.
No, absolutely. I was being flip.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
sorry.
If I'm going to be a greedy gringo, don't go there. But and it's kind of hard to get to. The San Carlos hot springs south of Ensenada are really, really cool. They're a bit of a drive. It's about a 45-minute drive in kind of inland, but that's where a lot of locals hang out. The water's awesome. They've got, 10 pools maybe. It's just a super cool vibe. People are barbecuing. They're happy to hand you a taco. And then I would say on the side of the road, it's not open all year round, and I'm not sure what's going on with COVID. We haven't been... I think we stopped there and it was closed. But there is the Urupan, and I really like Urupan. It's the little village right around the bend before you hit the Santo Tomas vineyard there? You know the big brick circular thing? I think that's the Santo Tomas vineyard. So right before that, you can drive in there, and there is like a public swimming pool with hot spring water, and then there's a business right next to it with showers, and you can even just go in there and take a bath or a shower, and so that's really cool that it's 5 minutes off the road and easy access and only 100 pesos to access. So
I really like the Guadalupe, just that view of the desert and the palms and the right on the side of the mountain. But for just a spring, what about San Bartolo?
Yeah, so I haven't.
So if you're in like Baja Sur,
that's our latest discovery.
Just north of like Well, between La Paz and Cabo on the east side, there's a little town, like a oasis kind of town that has like a spring. The water just comes out on the side of the mountain, and then they have some pools you can swim in. It's super cool. It's like just warm swimming pools, and people are barbecuing, and it's like 60 seconds off Highway 1, or that might not be Highway 1. That's Highway.
Yeah, it's right outside of Los Barriles. So if you get Highway 1 up, it goes into the mountains to go to San Antonio and El Triunfo. It's the first town.
And you can buy a lot of mangoes while you're there.
That was one of the, stop that poor Jesse has to put up with me for. I saw a big mango stand. I'm like, stop there. And he's like, oh, I really have to turn around. I'm like, yes, you absolutely have to turn around. And it was mango season, and they had dried mango and mango marmalade and mango candy, and I mean, I'm going nuts. And Jesse's like, pull back, don't buy so much. We're not going to be able to eat it all. And so we bought a bunch of mangoes, and then that wasn't enough. And we only got a couple hours of daylight. And I'm like, no, wait, turn down. I must see more of this town. And so we went down the town, and that's when we found the springs, and they were just
it's really nice.
The people were so cool, and the water was hot, so the water was cold and fresh, and yeah, Sam.
Water was not cold. It was
cool. It was perfect.
It was like 70s.
Yeah, it was perfect for a hot day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just eating mangoes and people barbecuing, and they I don't think they're used to having a lot of foreigners come in. They were looking at us like, who are these guys?
But they were very nice.
They were the kids, of course, thought it was heaven. They put on their goggles and started swimming. It was a big swimming pool. And so, San Bartolo is probably my new southern favorite.
Check it out. You drive right by it.
Yeah, and that once again, I'm sure they'd love the visitors too. So.
All right, favorite beach?
That's so hard.
El Barril, maybe?
Oh, man.
I'm going to say El Barril.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Cabo Pumo. I really like Los Arbolitos, just because of the snorkeling experience and how peaceful it is, but it can get pretty hot, so. And then there's surfing beaches, so that...
Yeah, I know.
I can't give a favorite.
It's a lightning round, right?
It's a lightning round.
Just shot on a cannon.
Eco-tourism, what does that mean to you? Or sustainable tourism?
Oh.
That's a complicated question, since I worked on my master's degree on that. Ecotourism, I think the idea of ecotourism is to be more sustainable. I don't think that's always what happens. I think it's a really easy label for nonprofits to utilize to take advantage of a community. I think it can also be just like sports or nature tourism. They can call that ecotourism, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's sustainable. I do have a lot to say about sustainable travel, and what I can say is this: if you're traveling in a foreign country, the most important thing is to try to speak the language, to be respectful, to ask questions and show an interest in the locals. And even if you don't speak Spanish, just try. And be as polite as possible. I think those are the number one keys to sustainability, and make sure that you're paying the locals. I think that's the key. And don't get swept up in like an image of what Mexico is. Go in and learn what Mexico is by meeting locals and funding those people, instead of like doing a big tour out of the U.S. I say go into Mexico and find it there. Don't pre-plan your trip like that in terms of sustainability. I don't know, Jesse, what do you think? I have a lot more to say.
Ecotourism. Wow, I think it's a very complex term nowadays. Ultimately, it's, I think, tourism with having like good intentions to like support the local community, but also to like sustain the ecology in that area. And that can take a lot of different forms, even just like in Baja, like let's just say whale watching, because the government steps in, so that can be a totally different like floor plan, how they operate that ecotourism, or a different model than how maybe some private people operate their version of ecotourism, which might be ziplining or fishing or whatever. Riding quads, which it's gonna have, I think all the forms of tourism are gonna have some kind of impact. So It's difficult, there's a lot of ecotourism opportunities. It's a lot of tourism they're gearing it now towards ecotourism. I mean, actually, ecotourism might even be like kind of an older term. Now there's a lot more newer types of subsets of tourism.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have any of those in Baja so much.
I don't know. I mean, going down and seeing like the
food
turtle.
tourism, maybe.
There's the turtle tourism down there for sure.
Yeah.
That was something that we sort of
whales,
observed from the side. Yeah.
Turtles, and I would say the like cave painting tourism is they would label because a lot of those are Baja does have several UNESCO World Heritage sites, so all of those fall under the ecotourism model, and I think it's good. They're trying to do what's best, and they do have some good rules in place, and maybe there's some improvements they could make, but
Mexico does a pretty good job, I think, of ecotourism as a whole. I find I'm often pretty impressed with their ability to, I guess, give the people what they want while still doing their best to protect the sustainability.
Yeah,
like
they're
the financial
definitely trying, even from like the government down to like the
locals.
The locals, the people know what it is, and they're trying to implement ecotourism.
And that makes me think of, if you're in La Paz, the number one recommendation I would make is to go to the Museo de Antropología, the Museum of Anthropology in La Paz is really, really cool. They have a lot about, the cave art. They have a lot about Spain coming over and taking over Baja. And they have a lot about the modern history of Baja. And the students that work in there and the scientists that work in there are really excited about the work that they're doing. And they definitely are excited to have visitors at the museum. So if you find yourself there, you can learn a lot about Baja by going in and having that museum. It's pretty impressive.
All right, 2 more questions.
Yeah.
What spot in Baja is closest to your heart?
I guess San Juanico.
Sarah goes pale.
I guess San Juanico. Yeah, I think that's for me my soft spot. I love it there. It's just that's where I consider a lot of my friends that live there to be family.
Yeah,
they're really.
Oh man, that's hard.
Jesse likes to get away from people. I'm seeing.
Yeah.
He likes San Juanico too.
I do. No, yeah, San Juanico is definitely up there. I really like the whole Catavina, Gonzaga Bay area. And then I really like the whole the Cape area region. I mean, it's just amazing down there. It is very crowded, but it's still really incredible. The beaches and the water and.
Even Puerto Penasco is actually a really cool spot, and a lot of people don't consider that Baja, but I still consider it Baja because it's right at the top. It's right at the Rio, Colorado, and
that's in Sonora.
I know, but I still
that's on the other side of the river.
I still count it as Baja. That's a pretty
Pinacati.
Yeah, that is definitely if you're just trying to get to the edge of Baja and have an experience.
Yes, go to Pinacati for sure.
Yeah, and Puerto Penasco, and what's the little town there? El Golfo. El Golfo is, that's a really cool little town too. Yeah.
I guess maybe I would have to say San Juanico, just because I've spent most of my time there.
Yeah.
I'm lied. It's 2 questions. We've got 2 more questions. What's been your biggest Baja surprise? What's been the thing that you just wow, I can't believe, whether it was whale watching or swimming with the whale sharks or the mule trip to the cave paintings or just the most delectable mangoes?
I would say mine is Valle de Guadalupe. That has been a really big surprise. I used to, I don't even think I was maybe 18. It was right when I moved up here with Jesse. And I used to have this little loop I like to do. I would go to Tecate and then drive Valle de Guadalupe down to Rosarito and ride horses and then drive home. It would be a day trip or maybe one overnight trip. And I would take my girlfriends down there because I was 18 or 19. And Jesse and I would go down there. We had a couple of romantic little adventures. And Valle de Guadalupe was beautiful, but there was really nothing along that road at all. And I think what has come out of that is really, really cool. I think the vineyards and the restaurants and I call it bougie Baja, and it's so fancy, but then each vineyard is different and unique in its own way, and the food's really good. And I think the excitement that is bringing to Baja and the commerce it's bringing to Baja is really, really cool. So that's my biggest surprise. If you had told me 20 years ago that was going to be like a hub for food and wine, I would have laughed.
No, surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
The ingredients are the same, but what they're doing with them is phenomenal.
It's amazing. And that's sort of the Baja experience, right? You can go down to Cabo and do a luxury beach experience, all inclusive, and do that where you're just drinking whatever drink you want, eating whatever food you want, and then you can end up camping at El Barril where nobody's there, and go into Sierra San Francisco and see amazing piece of history that's hard to wrap your mind around, to going and having a really nice dinner and drinking a really good bottle of wine. Like, how cool is that? And surf, there's a whole surf component, but let's not talk about surfing in Baja too much.
All right, Jesse, you're not going to get to answer that question. You're going to get to answer this question. What keeps you coming back? Last question.
What keeps me coming back? Just I just want to go find out more places, go to new places. That's really what keeps me wanting to come back, I think.
After 20 plus
like
years
so many
and
more
hundreds of trips,
arroyos that we haven't been in, and mountains I haven't seen, and there's still a couple places, some like really remote coastline.
40 years.
So, yeah, just exploring and finding new caves, new mountains, new creeks, and there's a lot of places I've seen on the map or mountains I've seen driving by that I want to go to. So I think that, and
a mom's guy, you have to admit it.
Yeah, and I was going to say friends and family. Like I have a lot of. We've been building some really cool trails down there that we're still not done, and
Jesse will say no with the family.
Taking the family for sure.
This is for mom's guide, and he'll take you down a random road.
The mom's guide's been fun. We've been going to new places. We've been trying to just cover Baja, go to new places, go top to bottom, left to right, in and out, and it's great.
Sarah, can we talk about the mom's guide?
Yeah.
That's your last question, then I'm going to say goodbye. You've
All
been
right.
very generous. So tell me, mom's guide, where are we?
So mom's guide, I still have a bigger picture vision of having a website and ultimately creating a family guide for families that want to go to Baja, because I think that's such an authentic experience for young children, really. And I don't know if you looked at my last post, that was a few days ago, but I was talking about, for me, ultimately, like a coffee made off of a wood stove on someone's porch in a cracked plastic chair. You can't get closer to true humanity and connection with an individual than that. And that, for me, I think is really important for kids, especially in this day and age where they're distracted by TV and media and cars, just the world that we live in, the American world. There's a certain narrative and visual that these kids have, I guess kids in the past have never had to deal with. There's a lot that you have to process, especially with COVID stuff and all the changes in the world. And to be able to take your family down to Baja and experience the simplicity of some of the components, I think is something your kids will thank you for the rest of your life. In fact, Lana was saying, our friend Lana, we took Luke, they met us down when we were living down in Baja, and their son is, I think he's 10 now. And she says, hands down, he was 6 at the time when he came down, hands down, that's the best trip he's ever been on. He talks about it still constantly. So that was 4 years ago, and this 10-year-old kid is still talking about the experiences that he had in Baja. And I think I want to share that with people, and I would like to talk more about how you can do that sustainably and keep it that way. And so that's my ultimate goal, I think, is to just create stoke and inspire women and families to go down there and not have it just be like a guy thing where they go down for surf trips or race or fish. It doesn't need to be that. It can be something that families really enjoy and experience and love.
And I'm going to get one more opportunity for you to dig down on that. The post that was before that with the sea turtles.
Yeah.
That's again just one of these things that just has spoken to me since I was a child. The hatching of the sea turtles, and Jacques Cousteau, like baby turtles returning to the sea. The cycle of life continues. I mean, that has stuck with me since I was your children's age, 50, well, almost 50 years ago, 40-something years ago. You did it. You were there. I don't know when that post happened in real life, but I only saw it last week. So tell me about sea turtles and the trip you took.
So I would argue that all of the experiences you see on a mom's guide are very spontaneous. It's not something we plan. I mean, the whale sharks I kind of knew, okay, I know they're around this time, and so we intended on that. But I had totally forgotten turtles were hatching. It was so spontaneous, and I think that's the most special thing about Baja is it doesn't matter what time of year you visit Baja, you can come like firsthand, you can experience a biological miracle no matter the time of the year, no matter what part of Baja you're in. You're going to see nature in a way that you're not going to see anywhere else. So for us, seeing the turtles was spontaneous. You know, as Layla said in our little voiceover, I laughed when she said it was a turtle. I'm like, it's probably just someone rolling in the sand. And it was a turtle. And she was walking up the beach and she laid her eggs right in front of us. And, you know, all of the people on the beach were just sort of so amazed. Even the employees of the hotels that go and stake off the nests are, you know, still amazed. And they've been seeing that their whole lives. And then it was so cool that we were just directed by locals that, you don't need to do the tour thing, you know, just that they dig those eggs up at 6 p.m. And so that's what we did. We got down to the estuary at 6 p.m. and there they were, and they were happy to share the experience. I was messaged by a couple people worried we had touched the turtles because that's illegal, or this and that did not happen. We stood behind a fence and they took my phone and were generous enough to get closer up videos, and we had, you know, clear conversations about what they're doing for to protect the turtles. And so I felt really grateful that we were able to walk upon an experience and still protect the turtles best that we could and support the community. And I would argue that no matter the time of year, you're gonna run into whales spouting, or in the summer sometimes in Cabo you see those rays that fly to the water. That's a really like unbelievable experience.
The kids like that.
There's the ospreys nesting. It doesn't matter what time of year you go to Baja, you're gonna experience some sort of biological wonder. You just have to look for it and it'll just appear, I guess.
Well, I appreciate you making some time for Slow Baja. One more time on your social media handle before I botch it again. A Mom's Guide to Traveling Baja on Instagram.
Yeah, A Mom's Guide to Traveling Baja on Instagram. It's a long handle, and I'm hoping to get a website up here soon.
All right. Well, Jesse and Sarah Beck, thanks again for opening your home and talking about Baja, and look forward to seeing you down there soon.
Yeah, let's talk again soon.
Thank you very much. It was great to be on Slow Baja.
It was my pleasure. Thanks. Hey, you guys know what to do. Please help us by subscribing, sharing, rating, all that stuff. And if you missed anything, you can find the links in the show notes at slowbaja.com. I'll be back before you know it. And if you want to receive notices on new episodes, please follow Slow Baja on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for you old folks.